Yeah, the Prime Minister today, Russell, was in Paris for Armistice Day. Now, I realise he has to travel around, although he's probably spending a little bit too much time out of the country at the moment, because he's going straight from Paris to Azerbaijan, to the Baku COP29 waste of space, the climate change nonsense. So he's going to that straight afterwards. He's never in this country. But could he not, Russell, have waited until after 11 a.m. before he went over to kiss and, play chums with Macron?
Kiss Macron's ring, so to speak. Yeah. Yes, indeed. It was only 12 months ago, Kev, if you remember, that Rishi Sunak, our then Prime Minister, covered himself in disgrace by leaving the Remembrance Day, or the D-Day, actually it was the D-Day celebrations, the D-Day anniversary early. So you would think that Keir Starmer and his advisors would look at that, which was only a little while ago, and realise that when it comes to respecting our veterans, those that fought fascism and allowed us to be free as we are today, that you would imagine that the Prime Minister of the day would take the time and trouble to be present for such a thing, particularly given the backlash that Rishi Sunak had when he abandoned those veterans on the beaches, as I say, not that long ago. So it does seem, I mean, to add to the catalogue, Kev, really, another significant and huge lapse of political judgment.
I think I think we should be offended by this. He should.
Yeah. But what was all this stuff in Paris and a tank? What was that? He was.
Look at him now, marching around in French military vehicles.
Yeah, an armoured thing or whatever it is.
But respect to the French and their Armistice Day celebrations or ceremonies, but our Prime Minister should be with us. This is the most special day of remembrance. This is the most special day of our calendar, I would suggest. A day, and by the way, let's sort of move on. So many young people now are saying they don't want to wear the poppy because, it's connected with war, and they're missing the goddamn point. They really, really are. It's this. What young people should realise, Generation Z and all that lot, when they say, I don't want to do this, it's the war's horrible and people die. These young men who sacrificed their lives in the two great wars, and indeed other wars, for this country, are the same as you. They're not ideologues. Oh, I'm going to war, I'm going to kill some foreigners. They're just young. They were young men, really young, 17, 18, 19. Their whole lives ahead of them. They got called up. They went to fight for their country and they were killed. And if you can't put a poppy on to commemorate those brave men, those heroes who sacrificed their lives for this country, I say to hell with you. I really do.
Look, clearly there is clearly a misunderstanding, but I would say also a purposeful political miscalculation, really, on the part of those people, where they see not wearing a poppy as a kind of protest, but they know damn well that wearing a poppy is not a symbol of promoting war and advocating war. It is, that's why it's called Remembrance Sunday. It's not that we are advocating war, unlike, as I'm sure we'll come to, the likes of Keir Starmer and Macron, actually, in terms of how they want to escalate things still further in the Ukraine, but we'll come back to that. This is respect. This is having fond and respectful memories for those that died. Millions and millions of people to keep us safe from tyranny and from fascism. Ironically, look where we are now. But
as I say, you're absolutely right. And to cut some younger people slack, I think you're right. I think they don't even quite understand what this is about. What you have to remember, everyone, seriously, and I'm sure most of you have thought about this, but, as I say, these aren't bloodthirsty young men who say, right, I'm off to France, can't wait to kill some people. They were just called up, and they went because they felt they were doing their duty. Many of them came back, many of them did not. And the tragedy of young men of 18 and 19 and 20 who died on the battlefields fighting for this country, the tragedy of that cannot be overstated. We should remember them, we should honour them, and we should wear our poppies. So if you younger people, you Gen Zers, can't quite work that out yet, remember it next year, hey? Let's do the decent thing. It's not. I think a lot of younger people, Russell, they think, it's poppy, right wing war, far right. We don't, but we love peace. We all love peace. So did these young men who happened to get killed in wars that were not of their own design. They were just young kids, basically, called up, and they did their duty and they died. And we should remember that.
Yeah, maybe it's seen by some generations as almost a tokenistic thing, a kind of hat tip towards patriotism. Now, I know patriotism amongst some isn't very popular, but I don't see it as that. I see it, obviously, as we've said, as a respectful thing. But actually, I see it as just, it's a note of thanks, isn't it? Because for these 19, 20, 25-year-olds or whatever that think it's cool to protest against something, you know, some of these kids come out of these left-leaning universities, want to protest, but they don't quite know what to protest against now. And this is one of those things. Just ask yourselves the question, where would we be if those 16, 17 and 18-year-olds had not gone to war in both the First and, in particular, the Second World War? Where would we be now?
Yeah. And if you, any of you 18, and I'm not having to go at all young people, I know millions of young people understand this, but those of you who don't, you know, you've got your mum and your dad, you're 18, you're 19, look at your mum and dad. Imagine how it would be for them. You get called up, you go to France and you get killed in the trenches, or you get killed in the Second World War. That's what was happening millions and millions and millions of times in this country through those two wars. And we talk about other wars, of course, the more recent ones in the Middle East, Afghanistan, etc. Any young man or woman who lays down their life for this country, we should respect that, and we should remember them. I'm just saying. Just before we go to break, Russell, let's talk about Remembrance Sunday yesterday at the Cenotaph. You know, obviously, always an incredibly moving service. And Nigel Farage, though, is moaning that he was blocked from attending as a party leader. I mean, party leaders go, obviously, the Prime Minister, the leader of the Tories, the leader of Lib Dems, Scottish SNP, I think the Irish parties as well, the Northern Irish parties. Farage says the establishment blocks him, and they didn't want to see a Reform UK person there. And I got some sympathy for that. I think he should have been there representing Reform UK, given that 4 million people voted for that party. However, there does seem to be some kind of weird rule that unless a political party has at least 6 MPs, that leader is not allowed to participate.
Yeah, that seems a bit of an odd rule, and I think it's not an old and ancient and traditional rule. I think it's something that the Leader of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, as I understand it, put in place relatively recently. Now,
when he realised that
I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist.
UK might get a few MPs.
I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist and join the dots in the wrong way. But what is very, very odd is that the DUP, so the Northern Ireland Party, they were allowed to lay a wreath, and guess how many MPs they've got? 5. Yeah. The same as Reform. So Farage has a point.
Yeah, he does have a point.
Well, you know, the answer to this, of course, is don't put an arbitrary number down. Just let every leader of every party that's represented in the House of Commons, that therefore represents the people of Britain,
I agree with that.
Let them all lay a wreath. What is it, another 2 or 3 minutes? I mean, for goodness sake, let's just be fair.
And because
And Farage is now, of course, by the left being criticised for politicising Remembrance Day. I don't think he's doing that. I think the man's a patriot and he wanted to show his respect on behalf of his party, and I think he should have been allowed to do so.
And he feels that this, I mean, you know, the establishment does conspire against Reform UK. They don't like Nigel Farage, they don't like Reform UK, and they do conspire against that party. Whether or not they did in these circumstances, I'm not sure, but that's what Nigel Farage believes. And I don't appreciate people telling, oh, you shouldn't politicise this, shut up. No, it's freedom of speech. It's what he thinks. Well, he can say that. And I think he's probably got a damn point.
Well, it's politicising it not to allow him to do it, isn't it?
Yeah,
so the establishment politicised it in the first place.
Let's all stop. So you shouldn't say that. Don't say that. No, you shouldn't have said that. That's how you end up losing freedom of speech by self-censoring. We're so keen to self-censor. You shouldn't talk about that. You mustn't say this. No, that's all wrong. No. It's better to let people say what they think. So Nigel Farage thinks the establishment prevented him from taking part in Remembrance Sunday. If he believes that, I think he's got every right to say it, and I don't want to hear these people saying, oh, he shouldn't politicise. What they mean is he should keep his mouth shut. No, he shouldn't.